And we'll begin with the triple bell. So before we actually ring it, we can just take a moment to become aware of how we're feeling, kind of the sense of presence we have tonight, the feeling tone that we have. If we're feeling pretty loose and cheerful, or if we're feeling maybe a little bit anxious about some things that we're working through in our lives. Sometimes it's kind of a combination of those things. But just becoming aware of them, it gives us an opportunity to let go of them temporarily, release those things, work on ourselves, work on becoming stronger and healthier as individuals. So let's just focus for a moment on cultivating some positive qualities of compassion for all living beings. Cultivating the sincere wish that all beings can be well and happy and free from suffering, that all beings can be surrounded by love and kindness, that all beings can be joyful, and that all beings can be peaceful and free and equanimous. So with that, we'll sound the bell. Let there be peace. Let there be peace. Namaskar. Welcome, everyone. And with all the hooting and hollering, we probably have an opportunity to cultivate appreciative joy. If you hear people laughing, things like that, you can work on that a little bit. So let's take a moment to get settled in, however you'd like to be for the meditation. Get your cushions and mats. It's good to see people taking a little time to get comfortable. Knowing that a body that is not in conflict is helpful as we meditate. And keep in mind that if you get uncomfortable at all while we're meditating, you can move. Feel free to adjust your body as necessary. There's no need to sit in pain. So feel free to adjust. And as we get ready to begin the practice, just those few reminders that I often go through. If you can have a degree of symmetry in your body, so that both right side and left side are equally handling the weight of your body, bearing the weight of the body. So there's no extra stress or strain on one side or the other. Let the eyes close softly to eliminate distractions. Let the breath be natural. There's no need to do anything special with the breath. And from here, I'll sound the bell, and I'll start to guide us through the practice. Follow the sound of the bell into silence. Let that silence draw you inward. Let it be an invitation to turn your senses inward. And take the opportunity to let go of the habit of the busy mind, which is to be projected outward and to be thinking about things in the world around us. It's perfectly fine to let go of the inquisitive mind and just turn the senses inward. Become aware of what it feels like to be sitting here or laying here. Become aware of the stability and the peacefulness that you find in your own body, in your own mind. And having established that sense of presence and that sense of awareness, let's bring our awareness up to the top of our heads, to the area of the scalp. And for a few moments, just open up your awareness to any physical sensations in the scalp. So the physical sensations we're looking for, nothing special or magical, we're just opening up to maybe a temperature sensation. You may feel warm or cool in your scalp. Or sometimes there is a feeling of air movement. You can detect the air, the atmosphere in the room moving a little bit, feeling that moving across your hair or across the skin of your scalp. Sometimes there are sensations on the surface of the skin, just maybe a little bit of a tickle or an itch here or there. Sometimes there's a feeling, kind of a subtle feeling of pulsation or energy. So just open up the awareness to these sensations. And as you observe, notice how they arise and pass away. No sensation stays for too long before changing or disappearing. So just observe the coming and going, the arising and passing. And take notice of any stress or tension that you find in the muscles of the scalp. And if you find tension, just release that. Release it. It's kind of an uneventful letting go. It's just noticing tension is present. I release this tension. And allow it to leave your body unconditionally. And then continue to observe the sensations, still in the scalp, just observing the arising and passing away. Now from the scalp, we can move the awareness downward into the forehead and see if you can feel that movement of awareness. Sometimes if you're very attentive, you can feel a sort of warm flow as the awareness moves from part to part. And then from the forehead, you can move the awareness through the temples. Feel it moving. Move down through the eyebrows and into the eyes. And bring your awareness to any physical sensations in any of these parts. Noticing them as they begin and as they end, as they change. Physical sensations of temperature, air movement, and sensations on the surface of the skin. And become aware of tension. Sometimes the brow is furrowed, or the eyebrows are raised a little bit. Sometimes there's tightness in the eyes, we can squint, or tightness in the temples. Just let that go. Continue to observe the sensations. Just a very gentle awareness of sensations. And then from the temples, you can let the awareness flow down into the ears. Illuminate the ears with your awareness and begin to notice the physical sensations there. Let go of tension, which you sometimes find in the ears. And keep in mind that there's no sensation that you're supposed to be feeling or not supposed to be feeling. This is just about opening up to whatever your experience is in this moment. There's no right or wrong. Everything is good. Moving the awareness forward from the ears now through the cheekbones. Feel it moving into the face. And then from the eyes, let the awareness move down through the nose. Feel it moving through the lips and the mouth and the chin. Take a few moments to just observe sensations. And as you observe the sensations, just let it be about feeling them, the experience. There's no need to think about them to any extent or to judge them or evaluate. Just let the experience be known by awareness. Let go of the thoughts and the ideas. And notice tension anywhere in these areas. If the jaws are tight or teeth are clenched, if the lips are pursed, or if there's muscle tension anywhere in the face, just release. Stay with the sensations, the continuous arising and passing away of sensations. And then from the chin, begin to move the awareness downward into the neck. Move it through the throat, and begin to move through the sides of the neck and the back of the neck. Noticing all of the sensations as you move, and letting tension go in the neck, letting the neck be soft and relaxed. And if you're sitting and you need to keep your head straight, just use enough muscle tension to hold the head, but softly, not overly tense. And then let the awareness move downward from the neck into the shoulders. Feel as it moves outward through the shoulders, noticing all the different sensations. And once you're in the shoulders, you might notice the additional sensation of contact. If you're sitting or laying, your shoulders might be contacting a surface. Feel that sensation of contact, or sometimes you'll feel the sensation of your skin making contact with your clothing. So just observe these sensations along with all the others, and let the tension go, let the shoulders drop, and then from the shoulders, move the awareness into the upper arms. And spend a little time with each part of the upper arms, the biceps, noticing the sensations and just releasing tension. Moving to the inside part of the upper arms, from the underarm all the way down to the elbow joint. And then to the back part of the upper arms, the triceps. And then to the outside part of the upper arms. And again, just let the awareness do the work. Let the awareness move through and no sensations. And just immediately release tension. Meet tension with a softness, with a letting go, and just allow it to leave the body. And now begin to move the awareness downward through the elbow joints. See if you can feel that soothing flow of awareness. Feel it as it moves down through the forearms, It continues traveling down through the wrists, observing and releasing and observing. Feel it as it moves down into the hands. And then observe the different parts of the hands, different sensations in each part, the heels of the hands, and the palms, moving around to the tops of the hands, moving through the thumbs and fingers, and then bringing that awareness finally down to the fingernails, the very tips of the fingers and the fingernails. Just take a few moments to observe very attentively. You may become aware of very subtle sensations in the fingernails. Just notice them with awareness. Be interested in the experience. And then from the tips of the fingers, let's maintain continuity of awareness and bring the awareness up to the top of the chest. Starting with the collarbones and letting the awareness flow downward. Feel it as it passes down through the chest, all the way down to the base of the sternum. And then feel it as it moves outward through the rib cage. Noticing sensations and releasing. And we can bring the awareness to the underarms and begin to move it down through the sides of the body. Feel it as it moves all the way down to the waist. And everywhere the awareness passes, there's a knowing of sensation and a releasing of tension. And now from the sides of the waist, you can bring the awareness forward into the belly. And just begin to open up to the sensations in the belly. So as you breathe, you might notice the rising and falling of the belly with the breath. Or sometimes a feeling of expanding and contracting. Let go of any tension in the belly. Just allow it to be relaxed and free. Continue observing the sensations in the belly. Sometimes that subtle feeling of contact between your skin and your clothing. And then from the belly, maintain the continuity of awareness again and move the awareness around to the top of the back. You can begin at the base of the neck and start to allow the awareness to flow down through the upper third of the back. Let it pass through the shoulder blades, through the different parts of the upper back, and then let it pass down further through the middle third of the back. Just noticing all of the different sensations as you move through. And finally bring the awareness into the lower back, noticing the sensations. Let the muscles of the back relax. If you notice sensations that are unpleasant anywhere in the back, just allow extra space in your awareness for those sensations to be just as they are. There's no need to reject unpleasant sensations or dislike them. You find that you can just allow this expansive awareness to allow all things in your physical experience and in your mental experience. Just let it all happen. Release the tension, let the awareness flow through, and notice how this allowing space without rejection, Notice how that really is freeing and liberating. And now from the lower back, you can move the awareness downward. Feel it as it moves down into the sit bones. Feel it as it travels through the hips and then through the different parts of the pelvis. Feel the awareness moving, noticing all the different sensations. You might notice the feeling of bearing weight on your sit bones, whether you're sitting or laying. Let the tension go, and then begin to move the awareness from the pelvis down into the thighs, all the way from the tops of the thighs to the knees. Spend a moment observing the top surface of the thighs, noticing the sensations and releasing the tension. And then move to the outside of the thighs. Same process. And then to the underside of the thighs, observing and releasing. And then finally to the inside part of the thighs. Again, from the tops all the way down to the knees, observing and releasing. Allow the awareness to flow down through the knees now. Feel that soothing flow of awareness, moving through the knees and downward into the calves. Feel it moving through the shins as well, moving downward toward the ankles. Stay with that flow of awareness. Really feel it as it moves. Move through the ankles now into the feet. Take a little time to observe the different parts of the feet and how each part has different sensations arising and passing. The heels, and then the soles of the feet. Move your awareness through the balls of the feet and bring it around to the tops of the feet. Move downward all the way down to the toes. Observe, let the tension go. Stay present with the sensations. And then finally guide the awareness into the toenails. And just take a little time. Observe. Patiently, attentively, persistently, just observe. See if you notice subtle sensations in the toenails. Let your awareness notice even the subtlest of sensations. This helps to sharpen the awareness, the ability of the mind to concentrate. And then from the toes, let's bring our awareness once again up to the top of the head. Bring it to the area of the scalp. And this time at your own pace, just begin to guide your awareness back down through your body. Try to follow about the same path that we followed together, so that each part of the body is observed, so that no part is forgotten. And you find that as you move through, in just a very brief moment, you can observe the sensations in a part of the body and notice and release the tension and continue observing. And you can just flow from part to part with this awareness, moving from head to toe, moving slowly or moving more quickly. Notice the places in the body where tension has returned after just having released it maybe 5 minutes ago. You discover tension has returned to the jaws or to the shoulders or the belly or any part of the body. Just become aware of these places of tension and let it go. Each time you notice, just release. Noticing tension in the body is a wonderful opportunity to begin to change the habit energy of the body. We often hold on to tension. We become tense in different parts of the body with difficult emotions, with worry or fear or anger. And that tension often stays in the body even after the mind has moved on to other things. And this tension kind of echoes those difficult emotions. So noticing these places, you have an opportunity to release the tension, start to change that habit energy of the body and mind. And now let's bring the awareness up to the base of the nose. And we'll begin to focus on the little patch of skin there beneath the nostrils and above the upper lip. Just bring your awareness to that point. And then from that location, expand the awareness a little bit further into the rings of the nostrils. And then expand it just a bit further into the nasal passages. So now we have awareness focused on this triangular area of the nose. With awareness focused here, just become aware of the movement of the breath in and out through the nose. So as you breathe in, be aware that you're breathing in. As you breathe out, be aware that you're breathing out. And just stay with that movement of the breath, breathing in, breathing out. Keep the awareness focused in the triangular area of the nose. Try to stay with the full duration of each breath, staying softly with the entire in-breath, observing as it slows down and pauses. And then it becomes the out-breath. And softly remain with the entire out-breath, observing how it slows and pauses, becomes the next in-breath. Stay with the movement of the breath. And as you do that, see if you can sense the touch of the breath anywhere within that triangular area of the nose. Is there a feeling of touch as the breath moves through, passing over that little patch of skin beneath the nostrils, or passing through the nostrils, or moving through the nasal passages? That feeling of touch, let yourself be aware, breathing in, breathing out, and the touch of the breath. And as you observe further, begin to notice any of the sensations associated with the breath. So sometimes as you breathe in, you'll become aware of the air being just a bit cooler. And then breathing out, the air is just a bit warmer. Breathing in, the air might feel just a little bit drier. And breathing out, it might feel more moist. So we have all these aspects of the breath to pay attention to the movement of the breath, the touch and sensations of the breath, all within this triangular area of the nose. And as you focus on the nose, as you focus on the breath, sometimes distractions come up. Sometimes those distractions come from sounds in the room or in the building. If you notice the mind wandering away, the awareness moving away from the nose, in that moment of noticing, just gently bring it back. Return to the breath, return to the nose, focus once again, reestablish awareness. And sometimes distractions come as physical sensations in the body. Sometimes there's a little bit of fatigue or maybe an itch or a tickle. If your awareness has moved to a sensation, in the moment of noticing that, again, this is a wonderful moment. Guide the awareness back to the nose and reestablish awareness of the breath. You find that sounds just take care of themselves. Sensations arise and pass away. Just remain focused on the breath. And if the mind happens to wander, remembering or imagining, if you notice that, again, take the opportunity to return the awareness to the breath and to the triangular area of the nose. Remain focused on the movement of the breath, and the touch of the breath, and the sensations of the breath. Repeat this process over and over. Well, let's share a few minutes of silent meditation together, focusing on the breath. In a few minutes, I'll sound the bell to end the meditation. everybody take your time, coming out of that gently. It's kind of like you're waking up a toddler from a nap. Just kind of do it gently, lovingly. Abby's thinking, I don't want to wake toddlers up from naps.
I was actually thinking, do I have to
Oh, but just stay with that feeling of peacefulness that you cultivated. And it's helpful to remember that, we did this together and, I guided you through, but the feeling of peacefulness and stability and equanimity, all of that came from within you. So that's something coming from your source. That's coming from inside. So it's not an outside thing added, it's an inside thing that's revealed, if you want to think about it that way. So it's something that we all possess, and we all have access to it. Well, that was a great experience with some of the noises in the halls and just sort of being aware of that. Sometimes when I think about my meditation practice and the practice that we all do together, I think of it as first sort of making peace with my body, which, a lot of times there's conflict with our bodies. It's not doing maybe what we'd like it to do or how we'd like it to do or as efficiently. And so the first part of this practice is to just make peace with this, where we live, this body. And then we start to make peace with our own minds. And we begin to notice how the little things that come up cause us to think and they cause us to react, and how all of that is often what leads to feelings of anxiousness or tension or irritability in some cases. Not always, but we begin to notice just these little things coming up that make us kind of react in different ways. So it's a wonderful opportunity to notice how that stuff arises and how it passes away. And we know that no sound lasts for too terribly long, so it doesn't really seem worth the effort to get real involved with a sound and react to it. And no sensation in the body lasts forever, so it doesn't really make sense to get too uptight about what's happening in the body. So just think of this as just a way of making peace with your body and with your mind. And once you've done that, the next step is just making peace with everything else. And that just kind of happens naturally from that state of peacefulness that we cultivate. So, wonderful. We have been talking about the Eightfold Path, the Noble Eightfold Path. We've been talking about it for several weeks, moving through it. And we've been talking about Samma Sati, which is right mindfulness. And we're going to continue with that tonight. But I have a little poem that I would like to read as we just kind of make our transition from meditating to discussion. So this poem is by Juana Ramon Jimenez. The poem is called I Am Not I. I am not I. I am this one, walking beside me, whom I do not see, whom at times I manage to visit, and at other times I forget. The one who remains silent when I talk, the one who forgives, sweet, when I hate, the one who takes a walk when I am indoors, the one who will remain standing when I die. And I like that poem because for me it just sort of touches that awareness of some deeper place within us that transcends all this, kind of regular stuff that happens in the world around us. But there's something much deeper, much more stable, much more peaceful and substantial than all of this other stuff. So, let's see. And of course, as we start our discussion, please feel free to ask questions and share experiences, anything you would like. Right mindfulness. And we have, you know what? I'm thinking that I don't have enough for everyone who was not here last time. I have 2 of these right mindfulness handouts left. Maybe we can just, somebody take them, and then next week I'll bring more of these.
You here, Lester? I've got
I'll bring more of these next week, so thanks, Elaine. That's pretty bold, getting up on those knees and moving. Knees are working good. Yeah.
I can share one. It's folded down.
Thanks, Brenda. Very kind of you. Yeah, I'll bring more. I will bring more next week, so everybody will get a copy of it. But we've been talking about right mindfulness, and again, the Pali term is Samma Sati, and we've been talking about, kind of what the characteristics are of right mindfulness, and just to go through those key points very briefly. There are 4 foundations of mindfulness, or 4 places where we establish mindfulness. The first is the body. We become aware of the body, its posture, its movement, the breath, walking, doing, resting. It's just an awareness of what's going on with the physical body. It's not a real uptight awareness where you're, so obsessed with it that it becomes uncomfortable, but it's just a general awareness. I'm aware of what's going on with my body, with what I'm doing. And you'll find that just that starts to focus and concentrate the mind. So if you're walking, it's kind of like when we're breathing and we know we're breathing in and then we know we're breathing out. That's a very soft, kind of gentle awareness, but it's focusing the mind. And it's bringing us in touch with what's happening in the framework of the body and the mind. So the first one is the body. The second one is the sensations that we experience in the body. Every time the body moves, or even when the body is at rest, there are sensations which are usually considered to be either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So we become aware of the different sensations. Sometimes we'll notice when the sensations are unpleasant that we have a little bit of aversion. We don't necessarily care for unpleasant sensations. We'd prefer to have pleasant sensations. So sometimes we can just notice this very basic beginning of craving and aversion just around the sensations in the body. And one way to illustrate it, if you think about just the lengths that we as human beings go to just try to feel comfortable or to feel good in our bodies. If you think about everything from the shoes we buy to the beds and the pillows and the clothing and the different exercises and medications and just all these different things we do around trying to find pleasant sensations in the body and trying to kind of keep away from the unpleasant sensations of the body. So we're aware of this connection between the body and the sensations that we experience in the body. And then that kind of leads us naturally into the third, which is the mind. As the body is doing things and we're aware, and the body is having sensations, we're aware of this craving, this clinging, this aversion, sometimes the ignorance, Sometimes we're aware of the strong desire in the mind to kind of anesthetize ourselves with pleasurable experiences, maybe food or alcohol or drugs or, just entertainment. It could be anything. So there's this kind of awareness of these three things: body, sensations or feelings, and the mind. And then mind objects. These are the objects generated by the mind in response to the first three. Papancha, which means mental proliferation, and we'll talk about that tonight. And then the presence of the three root defilements, like greed or anger or delusion. One works instead to develop liberating insight into the three characteristics, which are impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self. And just very quickly, what those are: everything is impermanent. Sensations are arising and passing away all the time. Arising and passing away. No sensation stays exactly the same for 2 consecutive moments. Everything is changing. And not only sensations, but just the world around us. Everything is in a constant state of change and flux. And so because of that, when we start to depend on things to be the same, we're kind of setting ourselves up for a little bit of disappointment. And sometimes it works because we can, we can hold things together for a while. We can get some security and some satisfaction from those things. But ultimately, everything is going to change. And so there's an awareness that this impermanence can lead to unsatisfactoriness, or in fact that it does lead to unsatisfactoriness. And just to explain what that word means in this context, it's just meaning that it can't permanently satisfy you. So it doesn't mean it can't satisfy you at all. There's a lot of things that are satisfying, very satisfying. But it's to keep in mind that nothing will permanently satisfy you. There's no one thing you can do or acquire that is going to get you to that place where you just are permanently satisfied and happy for the rest of your life. So that's what this unsatisfactoriness means. It's not a pessimistic thing. It's just a noticing that, this isn't going to do it for me forever. This bowl of ice cream is going to be fun for a while, but when this bowl of ice cream is gone, then what's next? And then the other characteristic is not self. And what this is a little more subtle, and a lot of people find it confusing, but really quite simply it just means that all of the different things that we experience, they're not us, so it's like sometimes I remember when I used to pretend my job was me, and so I would take on my job, my career, my title, all that stuff as myself. Well, of course, that job would change. It would eventually come to an end. So sometimes then we look for other things to be ourself. This is kind of the stuff that we're judging ourselves by, or that we're depending on for our identity socially and that sort of thing. So, maybe it's on your body, and maybe that works out well for a while when you're young, but then eventually that's maybe not a real good strategy. So, then we focus on cars or clothing, or it could just be all these different kinds of things. And all it's saying here is that none of these are really you. So just be aware of that in all of these things that you're sort of seeking solace in, that none of them are a permanent, real, lasting you. So that's an explanation of what these mind objects are. And then the qualities of right mindfulness, to be aware within the framework of the body and the mind. So an example of this would be, let's say that you had a strong disagreement with another person, and it turned into an argument that was unpleasant, and you feel kind of bad about that. If you were to sit mindfully, maybe you're meditating, if you were to sit and sort of think about that other person and what they said and how that was wrong and how that, what that situation was like, your mind is projected outward. So what right mindfulness is asking us to do is, rather than think about the person and the words that they said and all that other stuff, that instead we bring our awareness here and we become aware of, how is it that I'm reacting to it? And what's happening? What's my relationship to how I'm feeling? Was I made to feel unloved or, unintelligent? Or so it's, rather than replaying that drama over and over, coming here and just looking at, how does it make me feel within the framework of the body and the mind? Because that's where it matters. I mean, you're not gonna be able to undo what happened out there, but you can work with what's happening in here. The next is to be aware of the present moment, not the past or the future. And we've talked about this a lot, but of course, if the mind is in the past, sometimes it's pleasant things, but we tend to drag a lot of junk from the past into the present moment. And then it kind of upsets us and it worries us. Or we drag a lot of junk from the future, things we're worried might happen, things we're afraid of, we bring them into the present moment. So we've got these two kind of false realities that we're bringing into now, and we're dealing with it. So rather than past or future, just try and be present with what's actually happening right here in the present moment. The experience of the body and the mind, the sensations, what's going on. Just that little piece right there can bring us so much peace and so much stability. I was working with this quite a bit, and just share kind of a personal story because sometimes that helps people. Last Wednesday, my mom had a heart surgery procedure. My mom's 83. Some of you met her at the library when we had the talk, and nobody can believe she's 83, but she's 83. Anyway, she had to go in and get a procedure where it wasn't like an invasive procedure so much, but they did have to expose the heart, and then they installed a device which is a pacemaker and a defibrillator, and so they connect that up, and then they sew it up. And my mom was worried about having this procedure done, and she was concerned that she might not survive that, because even though that procedure isn't it's not super invasive, it's not super traumatic. I mean, when you're 83, everything is kind of a big deal if you're having a surgery done. So and so there was a part of me that was also concerned. I mean, this is my mom. I don't want her to die. I want her to be alive. I don't want to lose her. And so there's this feeling of fear in me, So the way I was able to work with that was just to try and stay in the present moment. What do I know to be true, So I drove to the hospital so I could be there when she got out of surgery. My sister got her there for the surgery. I was there when the surgeon came out, gave us the good news that everything worked well. Everything was a success, and then a few minutes later they brought her out, and I was able to be there and hold hands with her. And so she's fine. She's home now, and everything went well. But this is an example of how the mind will get so caught up in fear about what could happen. And then we're sort of playing these scenarios in our minds of like, how will I react if that dreadful thing happens? Like if my mother passes away from this, if I don't get to talk to her again, how will I react to that? And this is really common. I mean, if you observe yourself, you're actually kind of going through this feeling of grief and this feeling of fear and sadness just because you're thinking about, what if this happens? What if this happens? And so, and this is a normal human way to think about things. So the practice is saying, hey, try and bring it here and now. Try not to be projected outward, all the potential bad things that could happen. Be here in the present moment. What do you know to be true right now? So what I knew was that my mom was getting this procedure done. The doctor said she was an excellent candidate for it. The surgeon was great. It was Methodist Hospital, good hospital. I mean, everything was as good as it could possibly be under the circumstances, and so that's what I kept focusing on. This is what's happening now. This is what's happening now. And that, just that, is really helpful. You know, so notice, you know, sometimes it's sad because we really torture ourselves with just the fear of what might happen. So I worked with the present moment. This is the experience. And I found that that was really quite helpful, you know, that it really helped me not be obsessed by worry. Then, when Mom came out of surgery and I was able to hold her hand, then it was just present moment once again. It was just, here we are. You know, I'm holding my mom's hand, and she's, you know, she's groggy, but she's smiling, and she knows she made it, and she said, I didn't think I was gonna make it. And, you know, so she was happy to be there. And, you know, and then I kind of thought about the impermanence factor, that here I am holding her hand and talking to her, and how really quite possible it would have been that this conversation might not be happening, you know. So it's this awareness of impermanence without obsessing about it and without going to the worst, darkest place. But what all that does is it really helps us to embrace what we have in the present moment. And so I just found myself pretty calm, pretty secure. I think that had a soothing effect on my mom because I wasn't uptight and worried. You know, it was just helpful all around. And then we enjoyed the experience, and we joked and laughed and loved each other. And, you know, so that was the experience. But, you know, again, I share this just because these are real world examples. Sometimes we read the stuff and we talk about it and it sounds kind of like, yeah, this is a good theory and everything, but how do we really work with it? Well, this is, you know, just a real way to work with it. It's just noticing, yeah, I'm really out there with my mind thinking about all this stuff that could go wrong and how terrible it's going to be, rehearsing how I'll tell someone else. I mean, if you notice yourself, it's like, wow, we really get carried away by this stuff. So just that gentle awareness, not scolding yourself, but just saying, it's kind of like coming back to the breath if you know you were distracted. Just saying, hey, come back to here and now. What do I know to be true? You know, what do I know to be true? Right now, I know my mom's alive. I know she's having a procedure done by a good surgeon. This is what I know. You know, this is what I know. So let me focus on that. It's a lot better than letting the mind go to the worst, darkest place. So I hope that's helpful. And then also to maintain a continuous type of awareness. The more we can keep the continuity of awareness going, the more helpful it is, because then we're not just dropping into, oh, here's a scary thing, let me work with it, and here's another scary thing, let me work with it, but you have this ongoing awareness. So, you know, there's pleasant things, there's beautiful things you're looking at, there's maybe difficult things, but you're aware of the whole spectrum. So it's kind of putting these difficult things in perspective, you know, because you're looking at them amongst all of the other things that are going on. And then the subjective awareness. On-looking awareness is the way it's described in one of the suttas. So it's as if you're observing something, you know, from kind of, you're an outside observer just watching something happen. So you can bring that stability, that sort of peacefulness of mind to it. So these are the qualities of Samma Sati, or right mindfulness. I talk a little bit in this handout about the sense of self, which helps understand not self, but we talked about that pretty well. And I guess I'd like to stay on the topic of equanimity a little bit, because that's where we left off last week. And I think that equanimity is one where a lot of us have a hard time understanding that. because in some ways it seems almost so foreign to us. How do we develop and maintain this feeling, this quality of equanimity? And so sometimes the mind has a hard time really coming up with what is that like, you know? So we think it's sort of maybe a not caring anymore, you know, that if we get to a state where we just don't care, then if if bad stuff happens, well, then it's not going to bother us. Or that we check out, or we become so detached that we're just almost immune to it. And it's really not that at all. But because the mind has a hard time, trying to think about what this experience of equanimity is like, we struggle with it sometimes. So in part, that's the story, of me working with the issues around my mom's surgery. But
so what's the definition of equanimity?
the definition of equanimity, I like to share the dictionary definition and then kind of the meditation-based definition. So like in the dictionary, if you look it up, it says equanimity is a balance of mind and a cool calmness, especially in the face of adversity. That's kind of what the dictionary definition is. When you take that into the meditation definition, that is still true, but it is beginning to notice where craving and aversion is coming up. So it's not just the calm, cool, and collected when things are getting difficult, but it's noticing when craving arises, when I want something to make me feel better, when I want something to reassure me. An example of that can be in our, if you have a partner type relationship with someone where, people often go through periods where there's a little feeling of insecurity, right? And so you're craving this reassurance, or you're craving this, affirmation that, yes, I love you, I'm devoted to you, this kind of a thing. Very subtle, but a very real thing, again. So it's kind of noticing craving is arising within me. What is that craving caused by? There's a feeling of insecurity, a feeling of fear maybe of being alone or being unloved. So it's sort of you're looking at these sources, you're diagnosing what's going on, and then you are moving away from these oftentimes imagined circumstances, imagined scenarios, and you're moving yourself back to this, I'm letting go of that because it's just, I have no evidence of that. This is me imagining something. Same thing with aversion. The thing with my mom, a lot of fear around those sorts of things. Nobody wants to lose a loved one. It's always painful when it happens, but so much of the pain that we put ourselves through is unnecessary because it's around stuff that's not happening. So then we're noticing the aversion part. So the equanimity that we get through meditation and mindfulness practice is one where there is no longer craving and there's no longer aversion. So there is this real peacefulness, this real stability. So those two added components. So it's not I don't want anything because I just don't care, but it's I'm okay in the present moment with what I have. There's nothing else I need to enhance this. This is enough. This present moment experience is enough. Nothing I need to push away or deny or pretend isn't going to happen. Nothing I'm trying to draw or conjure up or make happen, but just this real feeling of contentment and ease in the present moment with what's actually going on. And I used kind of the image of a shock absorber on a car last week. There's bumps in life. I mean, you will have difficult things come up. But you'll find that when you have this base of equanimity, that when some of the difficult things do come up, you're able to deal with them from a place of equanimity. We probably all know people who we love very much, but who kind of run from one crisis to the next to the next. Do you know what I mean? Just some people seem to kind of, yeah, some people just, and it's not, it's not that they're bad people or anything like that, but they're just sort of, here's this drama, and then, it just seems like that one's passing, and then they come up with something new, and now here's this problem, and now this is going, and so there's kind of one crisis to the next, and so sometimes we know people like this. If you're at this place of equanimity, when difficult stuff comes up, it's like, yeah, I feel I can really deal with this because I'm at rest. I haven't been just running in fear for days and days and days and years and years. I've got this place of stability, of peacefulness, of calm. So from that place of equanimity, when difficult stuff does happen, well, then we can deal with it. We can deal with it much better, much easier. And we can, and one of the other wonderful things is when we do have somebody in our lives that we care about who's having a lot of hard times with things or struggling with things, we can help them in a way that before we wouldn't have been able to, because we're not freaking out along with them. We're able to, really come to them with some wisdom and some peace. And they sense that. And, so you can really help. So this is kind of thank you for that question, Mark. That's kind of an example of what equanimity is. There's this, in the handout, an excerpt from the Honeyball Sutta, which is a discourse, it's a recording of a discourse that the Buddha had. And I've got this section of it in the handout, but there's actually more to that discourse, and I kind of wanted to share that with you. So and this is about equanimity. So this is the discourse on the honey ball, the Madhupindika Sutta. And there's a character in this sutta. His name is Dandapani, and the description of him and kind of the commentary that goes along with the sutta, it says that he was a younger man and he was physically able. He didn't have any physical issues, but everywhere he went, he carried a golden, like a cane or a staff with him, and it was gold-plated, and it had like fancy jewelry and things like this. And so he kind of carried this flashy, sort of this, bling with him wherever he went. He always carried this gold stick, and just sort of made sure it was real obvious to everybody that he had this. So it just sort of gives you an idea of the kind of personality that he may have had. And he had heard that the Buddha was more or less camping out in one of the parks, and so he went to him to talk to him a little bit and to kind of see if he could maybe get the Buddha to bite on, getting a little upset. So I'll read from the sutta now. At one time, the Buddha was staying at Nigroda's park near Kapila Vatu in the Sakya country. So now you know where it happened. Then in the morning, that's northern India. Then in the morning, the Blessed One, having dressed himself and taking robe and bowl, entered Kapilavatthu for alms. So the tradition for the monks, and the Buddha was a monk, is to take their begging bowl and they go around from house to house, and just people would give them food. So that's how he would eat. And then the Buddha, after having gone through for alms and having returned from the alms round and finished his meal, he went into the forest and sat down under a tree for his noonday rest. And that's when Dandapani, who was walking about on a stroll, also went in to the forest where the Buddha was. And then Dandapani went up to the Buddha and exchanged greetings with him, but he was kind of condescending. The tradition is that if you were going to go talk to somebody like the Buddha or any other teacher, that you would go and you kind of greet them and bow to them, and then you'd sit down to one side, facing them, so you were at their level and you'd have a conversation with them. So he went, Dandapani went, and he greeted the Buddha, but he just stood there with his stick in his hand, his golden stick, and just kind of leaned on that. And he said, and he knew something about the Buddha and what the Buddha was teaching. And so he says to him, what does the recluse say? What does the recluse teach? So he's kind of trying to get the Buddha a little bit upset. So this was sort of offensive, the way he approached, the way he stood there, and then his question. So it wasn't like, hey, I've heard you've got these teachings, can you share? But it was, what does the recluse say? What does the recluse teach? And so he was kind of challenging the Buddha to a verbal battle. And so the Buddha said, friend, I say and teach in such a way so as not to quarrel with anyone in this world. And that was all he said. So he kind of took, Dandapani's steam away from him. But really the point of this is that from a place of equanimity, somebody comes to you and tries to get you upset, and sometimes that happens, right? I mean, we have people that seems to be their favorite thing, is to, let me see if I can tell you something that's going to make you mad, or ask you about something that's going to get you upset. So here was the Buddha in this situation, kind of being challenged by this guy who was sort of, boastful of his wealth and kind of arrogant, and challenging the Buddha as kind of calling him, it's almost like saying, it was a little derogatory, almost like calling him a bum or something, right? What does the bum have to say? He's a recluse. What does the recluse say? What does the recluse teach? He just says, friend, I say and teach in such a way so as not to quarrel with anyone in this world. And that's where he left it. And Dandapani kind of sneered, and then he walked away with his stick, and that was the end of the story. So then later on, there's more to this sutta, which I put in the handout. So one of the Buddha's students started to ask him about that, kind of like, how could you do that without, getting up and punching that guy, more or less? How were you able to handle this? And so this is the quote that's in the handout. So he said, dependent upon I and forms, I as in seeing, dependent upon I and forms, I consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. So there's I, there's form, and then there's I consciousness. So the I sees a form, there's I consciousness. The meeting of the three is contact. With contact as condition, there is feeling or sensation. What one feels, that one perceives. What one perceives, that one mentally proliferates. That's that word papancha. With what one has mentally proliferated as the source, perceptions and notions tinged by mental proliferation beset a person with respect to past, future, and present forms. And beset in this context could be translated as like to plague a person, or to oppress a person, or to afflict a person. So that's what beset means. So really what he's talking about is that there's a process going on. You see something, when you see it, You become conscious of it, or you hear it, or you smell it, or you taste it, or you touch it, right? So you see something and eye consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. And whenever there's contact, as a condition, there's a feeling. It's either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And so try this out. Just as you perceive things, or as you make contact with things, they're going to be either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. With what one feels, that one perceives. What one feels, that one perceives. So now you're perceiving it. In the teaching, to perceive something means to recognize it. To recognize it. So now I've got this sensation, I'm recognizing something. What one recognizes or what one perceives, that one mentally proliferates. So then you start this process of thinking about it. And this mental proliferation is specifically talked about as the stories we start to kind of spin in our minds. So that's the, thinking about the worst case scenario and thinking about how I'll break the news to someone about this worst case scenario and how that's going to feel. And right? So I mean, that kind of thing happens all the time. So this is the experience that I began to have with my mom, and then I came back to this. Let me just come back to this place of equanimity. Let me work with what I've got right here in front of me, what I'm certain of. This is what I know to be true. So it was to stop this mental proliferation. So when you think about stuff that makes you mad, sometimes you'll think about, I should have said this to this person. I should have told him this way, and that would have made him, feel really dumb, and then I would have won, and you actually feel yourself kind of getting tense. You feel, it's almost like your heartbeat increases, and you feel tension in your body because you're thinking about this stuff. So this mental proliferation will plague you. It oppresses you. It beleaguers you. It afflicts you. And it afflicts you with regard to past, future, and present forms. So you just start thinking, past, future, present. All of this in context with this story that you're spinning, kind of making up. So papancha, and this is on the last page, papancha in Pali, it means mental proliferation or conceptual proliferation. And it carries a negative connotation. So in these teachings, it's not talking about, you might mentally proliferate in a problem-solving way. So it's not what it's talking about in this case. It's talking about more of the negative connotation. When our minds proliferate in thought, the thoughts are not usually of all the wonderful things around us or the infinite possibilities for joy. Usually mental proliferation is around worries, problems, fears, guilt, regret. And of course, the root of those is craving and aversion. So that is a little insight into this idea of equanimity. That equanimity is really a choice, that it's something we cultivate. And when I say it's a choice, don't think of it as, well, I can either be mad or I can just decide to be equanimous. It's a choice in that this is something that we choose to cultivate. So it's not just a switch that you can flip. Sometimes you can after you work with it for a while. But really what this is saying is that this is a choice you need to make, and by making this choice, this is something that you're going to actively work on and cultivate. And so you can do that by noticing papancha, noticing this mental proliferation and how often that mental proliferation is taking you into these dark, scary, frightening, places that make you angry or upset. So notice that mental proliferation, and instead, that's when we move to the let me begin to practice equanimity, which is the qualities of the four foundations of mindfulness and the attributes. So you can think of it that way. So let me become aware of what it feels like to be in my body in the present moment, not the past or the future. What do I know to be true? What am I certain of? Usually there's not something terrifying happening in the present moment. We're all sitting here now. Things are relatively okay. Might be a little discomfort in the body, but for the most part, everything's fine right now. Now, any one of us could start to think about, mentally proliferate some horrible thing, and then we'd really feel terrible as a result of that.
I think that the Sanskrit Buddhists might use Shenpa, which I've heard about, and it's called like being hooked, where you'll get one of those thoughts and it'll hook you,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start doing the reeling and I should have done this or I should have done that. Well,
Yeah.
they did this to me, and like that
Mhm.
same, is
Yeah.
that what you mean by proliferation? Does
Well-
proliferation mean kind of more negative in this context?
Yeah,
Okay.
negative
All right, that's right.
connotation. And that hooked, that might be an appropriate thing to look at just in the context of that Dandapani story. Because really what Dandapani was trying to do was hook the Buddha. He was trying to bait him into reacting and getting upset. And so if he could take this guy who was known for always being peaceful and equanimous and never raising his voice or any of that kind of stuff, if he could bait and hook this guy into reacting with anger, that's what he was after. So yeah, I think that's kind of an appropriate way to look at it. So really, what this and we're out of time, so we need to end it. But when you're paying attention to just the ongoing experience of the body and of the mind, you'll become aware of this papancha, this tendency to mentally proliferate. And so by just gently reminding yourself, no, let me be aware of what's actually true in the present moment. What do I know to be true? What do I have evidence of that's actually happening? And then focus on that. So it takes a little bit of reminding yourself, just let go of the ideas, let go of the future, let go of the past, what's happening here and now. Deal with that. But you'll start to develop this degree of equanimity that'll be like that shock absorber. So I'd love to talk more, but we are out of time and I need to end it. So let's take a moment before we do, and we'll just cultivate these 4 wholesome states together. Think about this as almost like charging your batteries for the day and the week to come until we meet again, just cultivating these wonderful states. These too help you to live in a state of equanimity. So may all beings be free from suffering and from the causes of suffering. May all beings be surrounded by love and kindness. May all beings be joyful, truly happy. And may all beings be equanimous, so peaceful, free, in a place where there is no craving or aversion. And when there's no craving or aversion, then there's no suffering. So equanimity is this place of freedom from suffering. And then you sharing this room and your precious time with me tonight, to whom I am so grateful, may you all be truly, truly happy. Namaskar, everybody. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
I will bring additional copies of this handout next week, so you can get them. If you would like one sooner, you can shoot me an email, and I'll email you the document. So if you wanted to refer to it sooner, so feel free to shoot me an email if you want it, or if you want that longer part of the sutta, the Dandapani story, I can send you that too. So always more than happy to do that. Thank you so much,
Thanks, Ken.
everybody. Yeah,
Thank
great seeing you all again. Oh, thank you so much, Brenda. Appreciate it.
I'm not sure what I owe anymore, because I usually pay online.
Mm-hmm.
Do you not have an idea, am I up to date, or?
You know, I thought you gave me a check not too long ago.
Because I've just been paying online.
Sure, yeah, and I thought you gave me a check not too long ago, and then you haven't been here for like a few times, so, I don't know, why don't you figure you're good for a while?
Okay.
Yeah, figure a couple more times. Yeah, I think we'll be on the safe side. Thanks for asking, Norma.
I was at this women's urban conference, anyways, it was at like retreat nunnery. Anyways, they had this beautiful yoga room,
Uh-huh.
and they had chairs, but they had like socks around each one of the,
Socks?
so I've seen tennis balls, but like socks just to not scratch your feet.
Ah.
Anyways,
I will,
have something on,
I'm gonna have to get something,
yeah,
yeah.
because it'll start to
Yeah, absolutely.
get to the, but yeah, I've seen like tennis balls
Mm-hmm,
put on the bottom of them.
right.
I was just thinking about that yoga place where they had the
Mhm.
socks on them.
Yeah, I'm hoping I'd be able to, maybe on Amazon, buy like some extra rubber feet or something
Yeah.
to stick on. These chairs even have, like, some of them have
Some of them
something.
do.
Yeah, yeah, but I'll definitely have something
Because
on
you
them.
get that bamboo floor, man, you
Yes.
don't wanna scratch it.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, it's good to be back.
Good to have you back.
yeah.
Good to see you both, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Ken.
You bet, thank you.
One of these days it'll be loud.
Yeah, this building sure emptied out.
Yeah.
Man, it is quiet now.
my stuff back? Yep. Yeah, I didn't wanna do that for the chair parking. That's why I took the rest of it, I got chair parking.
Ah, thank you very much. Yeah, and you don't have to stack them if you don't want to. I can sure do that.
All right.
Great seeing you. Have a wonderful week. Good night.